Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first SEAC meeting of the 2020-21 school year. I'd like to start with a roll call, and we'll start with Autism Ontario. Member at large.
Hi, Craig Cameron, member at large.
Durham Down Syndrome Association.
Tara Cully, Durham Down Syndrome Association.
Ontario Association for Families of Children with Communication Disorders.
Hi, Elizabeth Daniel for OAF-CCD.
Learning Disabilities Association of Durham Region.
Evening, Rowan Jarvis, LDADR.
Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children. Association for Bright Children. Myself, Eva Kyriakis, and SEAC Chair. Member at large, Carolyn. No. Easter Seals Ontario. And then we'll go through the board members. Andrea, you want to start?
Sure. Good evening, Andrea McCauley, Superintendent for Inclusive Student Services, Mental Health Wellbeing, and our ECPP programs.
Okay. Mental Health Lead.
I'm Stephanie Pelborn, the Mental Health Lead here at the Durham District School Board. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Michelle Crawford-Eade.
Hi there, Michelle Crawford, Special Education Officer, Inclusive Student Services.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody I have missed? Tara. Or sorry. Sorry, anybody else that I've missed?
Donna Edwards, Trustee for Ajax.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Donna. Trustees and the second trustee.
Yes. Hi, Eva. It's Christine Thatcher, Trustee for Whitby. Pleased to meet you.
Thank you. And
Eva Kyla McKee, the other Special Education Officer for the Durham District School Board.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. All right. I'd like to continue by acknowledging that the Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. We didn't receive any regrets. Now, I know that some people don't have the hands up sign for the side, so we'll just acknowledge your vote in the chat, if you will. We need to approve the agenda for this evening. Christine. Okay, Tara? Okay. All right. The agenda is approved then. Then we are moving on to the Inclusive Student Services report. Or did you want to do the presentation first, Andrea?
Stephanie, I think we're okay to follow the agenda.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I think that puts me up, if I'm correct.
Yep.
So it's the department report sharing that the Inclusive Student Services team has grown for the 2020-21 school year, providing additional supports for students, families, and school teams. The system portfolio of Wellbeing and Mental Health lead, Stephanie Pelborn, has shifted to Inclusive Student Services, bringing her Tier 1 to Tier 3 mental health supports together while maintaining the key connections with other team members and departments such as Equity and Safe Schools departments. Michelle Crawford-Eade has also joined the department, and she joined us on July 1st as a second education officer to partner with myself, Kyla McKee, as that staffing complement returned back to 2.0 and the power of collaborative support for school leaders for inclusive programming. Through ministry funding, additional mental health staff, which would be social workers and psych services team members, as well as educational assistants, have also been added to the supports for students. In connection with DDSB at Home, our new virtual school, students have returned to classrooms across the region, both in person and virtually, as we have launched the DDSB at Home, which is broken down into campuses. With an enrollment of over 15,000 students, DDSB at Home is comprised of a secondary school as well as an elementary school, which is based on or comprised of 6 campuses by grade clusters. So for example, we have a kindergarten campus, a grade 1-2 campus, moving all the way up to grade 7-8, as well as a French immersion campus at the elementary level, and then a large moving DDSB at Home secondary campus as well. Each campus is supported by a team of CERTs and educational assistants and has an integrated team of psychological services, social work, speech, language, and instructional facilitators to support them. And based on individual student accommodation supports, the DDSB at Home also has an interpreter and intervener support embedded within it. As far as our special education programs, as we know, IPRCs are legal placements, and our commitment to providing each student individualized programming, inclusive of staff with special education training, is a continued commitment. We have kept our special education classes intact and connected as a classroom community with their educator teams. This keeps students connected to the staff that receive training and support specific to the outcomes of their specific program, and also supports the relationships which have developed as part of that classroom community. The decision also supports the ability for students, for example, those with developmental disabilities and who may be at greater health risk, to move between in-person and at-home learning as needed for the individual student and family. Students in special education programs have their individualized learning as outlined in their individual education plans, or IEPs, supported by a team of educators, a classroom teacher, educational assistants, and other connected support staff. The learning within a special education program space includes teacher-supported learning, practice supported by the team, as well as independent work and learning opportunities. Each classroom team plans together to support individual timetabling for students. It's important to note that students in special education placements in secondary, similar to their elementary peers, have access to a full day each day of in-person learning, which is in contrast to their mainstream peers who are on an adaptive bell schedule. Each classroom team, as they do each year, will coordinate students moving between teacher-led learning, supported practice or guided groups, and independent practice. That means that on a daily basis that each of the students, with a maximum of 10 for the programs that have been referenced, would spend time one-to-one with their teacher or other members of the educator team on their specific and individualized learning goals. What this looks like could be teacher working with the student in person, EAs connecting with students at home, and then the team shifting to reverse that support with independent practice times infused. And that concludes our department report.
Does anybody have any questions for Kyla with respect to the department report? Donna?
Thank you. Just for clarification, I know that our small classes have EAs within the classroom, and you did mention, Carla, that that the EAs will be supporting as far as that's concerned. I'm just wondering when a class is, when you have maybe a couple of students that are at home, and then the students that are in the class, is that EA time split up? Then say you have 2 EAs in the classroom, then one is helping the teacher within the classroom, and maybe the other EA is online, because it's supposed to be synchronous learning. I'm just curious how that works.
Thanks, Donna. So Our sort of language that we're using that seems to be helpful is a bit of choreography. And so within that classroom, it's an educator or classroom team, and that team includes the teacher and the educational assistants as a group of support. And so looking at balancing those times where it could be an EA that's working on virtually with that student, it could be the teacher, it could be a small group, and one of the learners at that time is virtually accessing. So we're calling it choreography because really it does need to be a coordination and some planning around what each of those activities may look like. There may very well be times where that student can be practicing those things independently without needing to access the educator team at that time. And then that balance between flex time and real-time learning. So it's about understanding sort of how that program comes together and working as an educator team to respond to those student needs. Recognizing that that would be a normal and typical thing in terms of balancing the whole group of 10, smaller group, and then independent practice. And that happens each and every day in bricks and mortar building. And so it's just that choreography of understanding that collaboration and how to roll that out.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions? No? Okay. We need to actually, my apologies. We need to look back to the approval of the minutes from July 7th. Did everybody have a chance to go over those minutes? And does anybody have any questions or concerns with respect to them? Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes? Tara, second. Donna, all in favor? Okay. Excellent. Okay, so the minutes are passed. Okay, moving on then to the presentation of on mental health and well-being with Stephanie.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Just going to share my screen. You just give me a moment. All right, so thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to present tonight on how the DDSB is supporting the mental health and well-being of all students. As Eva said, my name is Stephanie Pelbor. I'm the mental health lead, and I work with system leaders to support the system in how we can attend to student mental health and well-being. And this back to school is like no other. More than ever, now is the time for us to focus on promoting and supporting mental health and well-being of our students so they can not only survive this school year, but thrive. While this back to school is unique and for many uncertain, the DDSB's focus on promoting student mental health is not. Our work in this area has been guided by the board's strategic pillar of well-being and the Wellbeing and Mental Health Strategic Plan. The plan has built a foundation on which to move into this school year, committed to making mental health our priority. Our vision here at the board is to create safe, welcoming, inclusive, respectful learning and working spaces that promote well-being. It's about encouraging good mental health that's important for all of our students. Mental health, equity, student learning have always been important to us here at the DDSB. There has never been a time when uniting these priorities has been more essential. To be ready to learn, students need to feel a strong sense of safety, belonging, and well-being at school. We feel we can achieve this vision through these following goals: welcome, include, understand, promote, and partner. We strive for school communities and classroom environments that are welcoming for all students, where students feel included, they belong, and they know they matter. Where educators understand what goes into well-being and mental health, and where they promote their teaching, their education practices based on that understanding. And we partner with each other because we certainly know that we are stronger together. Here at the DDSB, we use a whole school approach, and we follow a tiered framework for our approach to well-being and mental health. Let me explain what that means. A whole school approach, we believe efforts to promote well-being and mental health need to be implemented throughout the entire school. A whole school approach is inclusive of all school staff. It addresses all students, education partners, and it touches all aspects of school life. Thinking in tiers, this tiered framework is the foundation for organizing school mental health activities. And it helps us see the full continuum of mental health needs and the full continuum of supports that's needed to ensure the best mental health and well-being outcomes for our students. 100% of our students have some degree of mental health. We know that health and mental health is health, and we all have mental health. But we know that 20% or 1 in 5 of our students may experience some form of mental health concern. And so that green part of the triangle, the all, looks at the 5 in 5 students. It's focused on mental health promotion for all students. Whereas that blue looks at some, those preventative interventions for students at risk. And then that purple part of the triangle is for students that have more intensive supports and needs so that we can meet our more vulnerable students. Here's another way to look at the framework. The work of DDSB Wellbeing Strategy, you'll notice the words in that foundational layer: welcome, include, understand, promote, and partner. That foundational level is school-based and classroom-based conditions that are needed for all students to thrive. By establishing those foundational conditions in our school, we'll notice those students who are struggling, who may need more support, more mental health supports, more accommodation supports, more understanding where there may be an opportunity to build on their skills and abilities. When we're able to do this, and we can see then that some of our students continue to struggle, we can then build the necessary bridges and intervene to guide students to more intensive mental health supports. The all, the some, and the few. Now, we know the main role of schools is to enhance the mental health of all students. We're not expecting educators to be mental health professionals. But when teachers invest in the practices that support the mental health of all of their students, students experience a sense of hope. They know where they belong in the world, and they understand their life has meaning and that there is a unique and specific purpose in life. Again, educators are not mental health professionals, but they can focus on building relationships where students truly belong and know they matter. They can focus on equity and inclusion. They can create caring classrooms where students take risks, learn life skills, ask for help when they need it and as they need it. Those foundational conditions that focus on promoting and supporting student mental health includes being upfront and consistent with the messages that reflect our commitment to making mental health and well-being our priority. The DDSB is committed to making well-being of our students and their mental health our priority. We're committed to leading with compassion and empathy. Schools are excellent places to promote and protect mental health. And we have strong mental health foundations to build on, and we will continue to build on those. And we truly, truly believe we are stronger together. So what does this look like on the ground in a school or through our classrooms? We began the school year grounding all educators in mental health literacy. We gave them resources to consider as they build their welcoming, safe, inclusive, respectful classrooms that are grounded in caring relationships and that support student mental health. They also heard from experts in the field, and we thought you might enjoy listening to what they heard.
months haven't been easy for me.
They haven't been easy for anyone.
C'est difficile d'être loin de mes amis.
I miss my teachers and school staff.
Maybe you miss me too?
You have, right?
Thank you for helping me learn how to learn at home. When you checked in with me, just to make sure I was okay, it meant a lot. I miss you.
Look.
Hi.
I like seeing my educational assistant on my computer. She helped me a lot during our time away from school.
And I hope you stayed okay too.
I'm really excited to go back to school. I'm excited to see my friends.
To see my teachers again.
Face to face, but it's a little bit scary too.
Maybe you're a bit scared.
If you are, I get it. There's a lot of questions. And a lot of unknowns, a lot. Here's what I know.
I know you care for me.
I know you'll keep me physically safe
And mentally healthy.
And I know you'll keep helping me achieve.
Because that's what you always do. You make me feel welcome, safe, included. You always do.
And it means a lot.
Even if I don't say it. It really means a lot. I miss talking to you in class, talking about what's happening in the world.
With COVID-19,
About my experience of anti-Black racism.
honestly, some of it has been hard to process.
But I'm sure glad murder hornets didn't become a thing.
I know you'll give us a safe, secure, inclusive place to talk about anything.
And I mean anything.
And everything.
It's a strange time.
Kids are nervous. I'm sure you are too. But that's what you do. You beat the challenges every day. And you do it so well. You're a team.
You collaborate. You connect.
You always support me.
And some kids need even more support.
Mental health support.
Guidance. Inside the school and outside the school.
You help. And that's what matters.
But I'm still a bit worried.
Worried about my parents and my friends.
And my grandparents and my cousin.
My brothers and sisters.
What are you worried about?
C'est un défi, mais c'est correct. Vous n'avez pas à être parfait.
Just take care of yourself. That's the best way to help take care of us. S'il vous plaît, n'oubliez pas. Vous devez savoir et ne jamais oublier. Nous tenons à vous tous. The difference you make, the difference your smile makes.
The difference your care for me makes.
It makes me feel better.
Makes me feel safe.
Included.
Just please remember, you should know and never forget. All of you are appreciated. Even when things aren't normal,
You're still amazing.
every single day.
Every single day.
Thank you to all the dedicated staff in our schools. You make a difference in our lives. You guys are great. Thank you, teachers.
Thank you. I can't wait to be back. Teachers, you got this.
So a video like that shown to teachers is in live action of how the difference a teacher's relationship makes to a student, and how a positive, caring relationship, a positive school environment where kids feel like they matter, they belong, there's a sense of connection and community, leads to positive. It can contribute to positive well-being and mental health. I'm going to share some examples of how we want to support and how we are supporting responding to the needs of our students. The first 20 days are the foundations of a mentally healthy classroom, the first 20 days and beyond of creating connection and well-being. It's a guide we created for educators with clear everyday strategies that focus explicitly on building relationships, connection, and community. We heard from the video how important that is, especially during this first month of school and well into the school year. The strategies in this guide are designed to help students feel safe, valued, certain that they belong and that they matter. They're also meant to help ease students into school routines. As our students learn ways for supporting social emotional learning and mental health, students can create a toolbox of strategies to practice throughout the year, inside the school and outside. For some students, we know they may need more professional mental health services. And the main role of our professional mental health staff is to be responsive to the shifting needs related to our students' mental health. We have a dedicated team providing direct mental health intervention services to our students, offering services virtually and in person. We've been able to increase the number of mental health staff, and we've increased accessibility. More direct services are being offered, which means more students are being served. But mental health and well-being is not a start of the year only work. It's our focus throughout the year. Our commitment is to build on the foundations we have while supporting and equipping our administrators, students, educators, families, caregivers, guardians to support and promote positive mental health, the 5 in 5, while putting in place resources and staff to take care of the 1 in 5. On your screen, you'll see an example of some print resources that we'll be sharing with staff and students throughout the year. We are in this together, and now more than ever, we need to partner to support your children, our students, to ensure they not only survive this year, but they thrive. On the screen are some resources. The first, the Foundations of a Mentally Healthy Classroom. It's a calendar created for parents so you can have a snapshot into what's happening in the classroom based on the teacher's use of the 20 days document. Our Inclusive Student Services has questions answered and information for you about how we're continuing to walk alongside you to support your student, and our priority is to find a way to be helpful to you. And our intention as the year unfolds is to think about how to provide for you resources to keep an eye on how your children are doing and when to notice there might be concerns and when you might want to ask for help. And we have several resources that will help us in this work. Those on the screen are just a small example of toolkits and online resources that will help us in the work of promoting, supporting, and protecting student mental health. I want to draw you to the middle of the screen, the first 10 days and beyond. If it sounds familiar, it is. The DDSB's first 20 days and beyond caught the attention of School Mental Health Ontario, which is a provincial body that works with the ministry to support all boards across the entire province with mental health resources. They picked up that 20-day document because they saw the potential and the power of intentionally, explicitly creating connection, community, relationships. And they created a 10-day version based on our 20-day. There's so much amazing things happening here at the DDSB. We're promoting and supporting student mental health. And this is just a quick snapshot of what we're doing to support our students. So I want to thank you for your time. It was a lot of information, and I want to open the floor to any questions or comments.
Does anybody have any questions? Christine, go ahead.
Stephanie, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. I really love the video in particular. I was just wondering if you could expand or maybe clarify. You mentioned there are more direct services. I wonder if you could just expand on that. Are you talking about people services, maybe a combination? Just wonder, Stephanie, if you would maybe explain that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So if you don't mind, Trustee Thatcher, we'll swing that one my way, just because of the funding background for it. So we received additional funding over the summer, in addition to what was previously the mental health workers in secondary schools becoming part of the GSN funding. So we're pleased that our social work complement has gone from previously 20, including our lead, up to 24, plus an LTOs, we're at 25 currently. And we've also added an additional psychological services staff member. And as Stephanie referenced, we try and move the dollars as close to direct service to students as possible, because we know that additional mental health workers not only augments the thinking of the team, but it directly impacts how many students and how far the reach of the team is. So we are up quite a few members in that regard, and those are permanent positions.
Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you. Any other questions? Tara?
Sorry, I was just waving my hand there. Sorry. Thanks, Stephanie, for that. You mentioned the first 20 days guide. Is that available to parents? How is that made available? When are we getting it? Have we already got it and I've just missed the email?
That's a good question. It was a document created for our frontline teachers to use as they develop their day's teaching planning. We did create a parent calendar that gives an example of what the focus is. So each of the 20 days has a particular focus. Won't surprise you that day one was welcome. We wanted to talk about norms and expectations. And then we move into things like how you feel matters. You matter, you're valued. And so each day has a theme, and the calendar highlights an activity that is possibly done in a classroom to match that theme. And I do believe that calendar, Andrea may want to help me with that. If it's not, it will be on our webpage.
Absolutely, and we'll send the link out to SEAC members, and happy to provide the resource given your positions within your organizations that you represent as well, just so you can have that schema for how all the areas of the board priorities are actually woven right in alongside the mental health and well-being. Stephanie did an exceptional job of leading the team that wrote that document for the system.
Carolyn, go ahead.
Great. Again, great presentation, Stephanie. I'm just wondering, since this will be going up on the website, is that link included in some of the documentation that's being sent out to parents? I know from time to time there's communications. I think parents know what's going on, and there's some, I guess, toolkits. Is that just going to be additionally part of that documentation for parents to check? I'm not a, I guess, parent anymore of a child that's with the DDSB, but I do have like nieces and nephews that are still part of it. So I want to be able to sort of tell my network, look out for this communication, or check this link, or maybe if it's on the Twitter or any other social media that the DDSB puts out, because I'm still following those, that would be good to know.
That's fantastic. So through DDSB Healthy Minds on Twitter, each of the school calendars is being followed. So for instance, because we have those variants for school calendars, and so anybody's able to find the school calendar. And again, our school teams will be a bit variant based on local needs. As Stephanie said, the days are, like, the order is sequenced, but school teams may pause on a particular theme that's of need in their school community. But it gives a really good kind of metrics and overview to building that belonging and mattering culture within classrooms.
Okay, great, thank you.
The one thing I might want to add to what Andrea said, we know that the school year didn't quite start up in the sequence of day one, day two, day three, as a nice tight calendar will demonstrate. And so we're inviting our schools based on the way, what is a day one, what becomes day two. So just to be mindful, if you go under, September 16 and you wonder, schools, like Andrea said, will be using it based on how the cohorts of students are coming into their buildings and on virtual.
Great, good to know.
Anybody else have any questions? No, Tara, I know Tara has one more. Go ahead.
All right. So one of the things that I just wanted to sort of ask a little bit more about from the perspective of the understanding mental health and the inclusion, is there consideration in all of those calendars and that method for children with cognitive delay that might not be able to express how they're feeling or be able to participate at the levels that neurotypically developing children would? Children who are nonverbal, how are we including them in this conversation? What are there strategies in place with that?
The advantage of our teams working alongside each other, and the advantage, as Kyla referenced, to seeing mental health for that well-being tier 1 into tier 2, and then our tier 2, tier 3 workers coming under the same umbrella and leadership team, because we're able to support the system and support our educators across the system in differentiating, similar to how we would with curriculum, the teams right alongside. And again, those central themes of belonging and mattering, inclusion and accommodation are very much key to that. So thank you for that question.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. That was a fantastic presentation. And those kids, honestly, it was killing me. I was like, they're adorable. Yeah, they did a great job. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then to business arising from the minutes, which I don't believe we had any. So that's a quick one. And then the open discussion period is 8B. And I believe we had scheduled for September, the discussion to be around the role of SEAC and the possible review of the SEAC handbook. Because I think, often we have these meetings, and I think sometimes we may not be sure of what our role always is, right? So I'm not sure how you guys want to have that discussion, or you want to kind of go around and, sort of give your idea of what you think the role of SEAC is or should be with the board. Andrea, are we able to get a link out with the SEAC handbook attached to it so people can take a look at that?
We can. We'll just see if we can do it during the meeting or not. So I'll just connect with Diane if you don't mind me peering at my phone for a minute.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, go ahead. Would anybody like to sort of start on, sort of what they see the role at SEAC as being? Anyway. Rowan?
Thanks. I think one of the many roles, when I look at it, is sort of very grassroots. Like we're fortunate to represent different groups within our community, and even before I came to be on this board, I probably would not have known where to start. And I think most of the I shouldn't say most, I don't know. But I would imagine a large number of people don't really know where to go or where to start. I think we've had several responses where they say, oh, I didn't even know you guys existed. Oh, you do that? And so I think a lot of people will just kind of sit on their questions and just let it pass by without knowing that they can voice to somebody, without knowing that they can perhaps affect some type of change. So I think at the very base, it's us listening and then trying to take an aggregate response from different people, bring it to everyone else, because chances are if something's going on in our community, something's going on in someone else's community, and the more voices that are heard, then hopefully we can affect some type of change. So I think it's just taking the voices that aren't heard and making them heard, and then seeing where we can take that information and move forward from there. Thank you.
Excellent. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Tara, go ahead.
Hi. Really well said, Rowan. I agree basically with all of that. Personally, I think as well for me is understanding that we are a group of advocates. A lot of us are parents, a lot of us are members of our community. We may or may not be professionals in education or in clinicians. I'm just a mom of a child with Down syndrome. But I'm able to provide that level of expertise and that additional lens to bring to this group, because children with Down syndrome have unique needs. Children with LD have unique needs, and the list goes on. And there's power in the numbers, back to what Rowan was saying, that we all bring that voice, and then we have a lot of similarities and a lot of overlapping needs. But at the same time, for me, I find it, then I can take everything that I'm learning here and I can bring that back to my community as well. I can help bring my membership more information, help them become better advocates. So sort of a paying that forward situation. So for me, part of this is I'm participating in SEAC on behalf of the Down Syndrome Association so that I can help bring them more knowledge so that we can become a better group and a better community going forward and helping our kids be included not just in the school community, but in the community at large. That's sort of how I see me.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent. Donna's next, and then Craig.
And it's an issue that we've had for a long time, is getting what the role of SEAC is. When we were doing our surveys, etc., that was always a key thing. And I'm just trying to. These are just some thoughts in that. I know that each of the associations have their own websites, but that's once a person actually understands where their child it has actually a diagnosis or something to that effect. Whereas somebody who's just getting into the system, it may not have, they're not sure where to go. And that's where I really see, SEAC playing a key role in being able to provide advice. And so I'm just wondering how we go about having something a little bit more interactive on those times when parents have those questions, and where we can lead them to the various associations, etc. Or when there's some general advice. And I know that would take a little bit of people's time, but I think that somehow we have to get that group together and have an option to come and see what we're about, but also just to get that first step into and lead to the various associations. I know that there's a couple of SEACs that do a few things, but I think it's wise maybe we sort of look into something like that just to start providing. And I said we're not going to. It's just to lead them in the right direction to the right people to the various associations, or for some guidance. Just a thought. You're muted.
Sorry, Craig is next.
Yeah, I saw you were muted, Eva, but I gathered you were going to call me next. It is good to see everybody. Welcome back to these strange times. What I would like to say is sometimes, I'll be honest with you, when I come to a SEAC meeting, I really sometimes don't feel like I'm affecting much change, but that's not necessarily always negative. So if we look at the budget process and things which I feel are overwhelming, and we have wonderful members who try to address those situations, which are challenging for both administration and us as community members. But a member at large, my biggest role has been advocacy, and I like the word that's been used. Now, I know that Carolyn and I get these random emails. Sometimes they email us both, and we will squabble, or I'll try to push them to her. Just kidding. But we also get emailed individually, and I find that that is where I feel most useful in terms of taking information that I gather from these meetings. So although I don't feel like I'm having a significant impact on the behemoth that is the administrative thing that Andrea contends with all the time, which I commend her for, I do feel that the information that I can get, I'm able to try to help families access information. I will say right now, while I'm at it, is that the overwhelming amount of information that is on the DDSB website is mind-numbing. And that has been the biggest piece of work that I've been doing with Startup outside of this committee, is helping folks find documents, particularly that pertain to their accessibility needs. And I just right now have called up 3 different documents on the Inclusive Services website and on the main DDSB website. Some are on one page, some are on, and I get it. There's just so much information. The same thing is happening with my institution, that there's just an overwhelming amount of information going out. I think simpler is better. But that has been what I've been helping with while this startup is happening, is trying to guide folks to, yes, you can still communicate with your school administrators, email, call, because there is a bit of frozen apprehension in terms of what do I do next, which is understandable. So, if you look at the rights, the roles and responsibilities on the SEAC handbook, quite frankly, it's reasonably intimidating in terms of what it asks you to be prepared for. But I think each of us can find a niche to support and serve the communities that we live in is probably the most vital part for me, because honestly, I'm not meeting some of those other roles and responsibilities because I can't, and we rely on each other. So I think more conversation about what it is that we are doing in our individual bubbles, to use that overused word right now, would be helpful. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. Christine, go ahead, and then next, Carolyn.
Thank you. I'm just actually wondering, Andrew, if you can help me a little bit with this. As you all know, I'm fairly new at this whole thing. So I know for myself, when I have talked to parents about their kids, I've asked them if they're familiar with SEAC. And very few of them seem to be. So it seems to be, to me, that we have some amazing resources right here within this organization, but we need to let parents know that we have them. And so somebody said something that kind of made me wonder if, when I look at the people who serve our students, our special students, and their families out there in the community, I'm thinking about our special education resource teachers. And I don't know, Andrea, if that's, as I say, being new, it may be something that's already been thought of and done, but I'm just wondering if there's, maybe if we and I'm not even sure if this is the year to do it with everything else that's going on, but I'm wondering if that might be a venue for us, because I do remember when I was a special education cert myself, that I did have opportunities to talk to families, and they really reached out and asked, what is available out there in the community. So that's just my thought. And as I say, by all means, if it's been thought of and I'm out in left field, Andrea, go ahead and tell me.
Hear you, Eva. So thank you for that. I think as much as we can promote SEAC, I'm happy to do so. And I think that CERT role is a really good conduit and liaison to our families. I know in previous years we have had SEAC chair present to our CERTs at their capacity building. And we've also wondered as SEAC around distribution of the SEAC brochure and how we can increase that as well. I know there's kind of two aspects to it too. Is one is that, and Craig spoke so highly well about it, is that family support, and so SEAC's awareness in the community. And then in my role, what I'm really trying to do, and was spending some time framing, and even on the meet, is ensuring that consultative piece. I know we usually provide a lot of information to you, knowing that community members are connecting with you, but we really made, and I think last year hit it a bit stronger, and then this year we'll do so stronger again, that consultative piece, so that you can see your voices reflected in the services and programs. But to me, that makes it even more important that we grow how the families are connecting with you, so that you come into that conversation, because ultimately it's about service to them. So we'll take that back. Both officers are on the call this evening as well, and have that lead through the facilitators and CERT. So that's something we'll definitely take back. Thank you for that suggestion. And I think it's just an ongoing conversation about how we continue to promote SEAC as an incredible organization in the community.
I totally agree, Andrea. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolyn. You're next, and then Claudine.
Okay, great, thanks. Just to follow up on what Craig said, the two of us being the two members at large, so we're not representing any other organization. Like Craig, I find that I get sort of the most maybe bang for my buck for SEAC, and I'm able to sort of promote SEAC through those same emails that Craig talks about, or people calling directly, because I guess our numbers in the brochure, and being able to then maybe go back and refer to some of the other expertise. I know recently, although it wasn't spec ed related, I think I reached out to Donna to ask about some enrollment issues that some parents were having. So, I mean, I get a lot of, I find the value that through SEAC is basically being able to take the information that I get from all of you and convey that to the people that do reach out to me in the community, and then also try to get them to participate in some of the processes and understand some of the processes like the IPRC and some of the other things, IEPs that are being developed, because a lot of times parents are a little bit lost in all of that. And now adding COVID-19 to the mix and all the communications that are coming through, again, just trying to direct them to, you know, if they're not understanding, I'm saying, well, you know, I'm pretty sure that this link or this communication went out, maybe check the website, check your emails, things like that. As I said, I'm not maybe as tuned in as I have been since my child is no longer a student in DDSB, having graduated, but I still feel that the value of being a part of SEAC is being able to take the different perspectives and the information provided by all of you, and then putting it back out there to the parents that I'm in contact with. I think one of the things that I sort of struggle with is that the fact that I'm not part of any one organization, it always seems like sort of small groups of people that you're able to sort of convey information to. It would be great if some way, maybe I'll start a blog, to get more people the information and say, hey, did you know that? Because there's a lot of great information that I get out of SEAC, even this presentation tonight, you know, a lot of different things that I think parents should know, and a lot of times they just don't. Maybe information overload, maybe again, if your child has a particular issue, you're focused on that and not so much all the other things that are going on. So I'm still trying to wrap my brain around how do I get this great information from SEAC and get it out to the parents in my network and then sort of beyond. But I think that's the value of SEAC is all the different perspectives that we have. It's just a matter of how do we connect with parents. I find we're doing a lot of great things within the board and so on. How do we get those parents to understand what we do, or to contact us if we, you know, to share some of their stories so we can bring it forward to SEAC, not just on a one-off basis.
Thank you, Carolyn. I don't think Claudine's been able to reconnect just yet, so we'll move on to Hannah and circle back to Claudine when she's able to connect back on. Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of continue the discussion here in terms of the role and some ideas for SEAC. I mean, I think for myself, I think one of the roles that I think I have on SEAC is to bring the perspective similar to what Tara was saying and others, as well as just the specific needs of the group that I'm representing. And I think the other piece that definitely, as I've gotten more connected with Easter Seals and as we've been connecting more with the different representatives across the province as Easter Seals Ontario, is that I also have that that broader community perspective of what's happening in the other school boards. And I think that's something too that is I find helpful to hear. And I think similar to some of the people putting out ideas out there, I have seen that at least PAC on SEAC recommends the SEAC putting together an annual report to look at some of the highlights, and I thought that was an interesting idea. And I do think that over time, I think some of us or I can speak for myself. I'm getting a little bit more familiar with where I can kind of speak, as others were saying, and finding the areas where I feel like I can provide the perspective of both our family, my daughter's needs, as well as the larger community that we're interacting with. But I like the idea of really pushing SEAC more, because I think kind of what's also been said is that I think we need to be hearing more voices. And even as Easter Seals, I've been putting that out there, as well as that I'd like to hear more voices from other people that I might not typically hear from, because for different circumstances, they're not within the realm of circle that I might interact with, and they could be a very important voice. So I do think as we promote SEAC more and as we get our role out there, but then I think also as we clarify what our role is and what we want to be focusing on each year, I think that will also create momentum within itself as well. Those are just some thoughts I have.
Rowan, go ahead.
Again, in terms of the idea of getting it to the people, I think is very important. And I'm just turning it around, thinking about, do we have any action-based ideas? Like, is it something where, we have a lot of great minds here, perhaps, I don't know, next month we all submit a couple ideas, and then we just kind of look at them and see which ones might have the most effect. Because I think, and I think we're doing a great job, but it's at the same time, what will I walk away? It's kind of Craig in one of my ears just saying, how do we make it as practical as possible? And, I would love, let's say in a month or 2 months, we walk away and say, oh, we all contributed, and this is one way we're letting other people know about all the great ideas that we have. So maybe we have to challenge ourselves to, submit everything, and then 1 week just same way we did it before in terms of the different subjects for the year. And I'll be honest, I kind of faulted on that, and I'm kind of realizing that now. I'm saying, well, how do we at least get it out to the people so that SEAC, they know what it is? And so perhaps we need to just submit some ideas amongst ourselves and then come up with a couple good ideas and then execute.
Anybody else? Donna, go ahead.
One of the things that I kind of would like to see, and we have been doing this a little bit more, Andrea, is that as the ministry looks at consultations that have come out, we have been trying to get that input. Sometimes the consultation is happening really fast. The periods, we have a very short turnaround time when they're requesting feedback, but it definitely helps me as a trustee being on the Ontario Public School Board Association, but also on the K-12 Standards Development Committee, getting the feedback locally from a perspective for all the associations when it comes to feedback to policies. And so I know we did that around the service animals and so forth, but I think one of the things it would be kind of good is saying these are all the new PPMs, policy memorandums that have come out, or these are the consultations coming out, things like that, and that we try to get that information, or a way to get that information from this organization, from our SEAC, because it's always a very, very good, important perspective to get that. Even that the information is from a local perspective, and like, I can present that even at a provincial perspective as well, sort of getting the feedback from the various associations. So I think that's one of the things that we've been working on, but I think we can do better.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Donna. Tara, go ahead.
Yeah, I like Rowan's idea. I think one thing that I might suggest as well is we've talked through a few times in the past, trying to intertwine a little bit more with the SCCs or the parent engagement committees, because it's really the parents that we want to kind of get out into the community. And the schools more or less know that we exist, but it's the parents that really are oversight and our lens is what we really want to bring to the table, and let them know that we're there for them, and that they can come to us. Everybody else it's not just this group that I see in little boxes in front of me. It's everybody in the community can have brilliant ideas and ways to do that stuff, but it's trying to get that engagement. I don't know if something like, I think at one point we talked about trying to get time at SEAC meetings, but there's so many schools in the board. Maybe is there a quick presentation we can put together to send out to the SECs and ask them to play it at one of their meetings, and just saying, hey guys, this is who we are. This is what we do. Yes, people will have to put on, do their hair and have a shower, but those sorts of things. Just even just a few people who are willing to do that and represent and say, this is who we are. If you haven't got one, go ask your cert for the SEAC brochure. We've got them in spades. Let's get them out to everybody. Come ask us. We're here. We're here for you. We're here as a group of advocates for you and everybody in the community. Just even something like that, just trying to, that's really the key of it, is how do you get that word out that it's there. I think we tried to add the SEAC, the SEAC brochures to sort of every new parent that came into the school and stuff, and that sort of kind of fell in execution, that it kind of went okay in some schools and some schools it didn't. So it's so hard because you have such a distributed system, so many people and so many schools and stuff to try and get through. So I'm not sure how one reaches everybody through, and that's been the challenge to date. That's just me blithering at this point. I'll stop.
Go ahead, Andrea.
So I think part of the beauty of the 2021 school year, because it has brought gifts as much as it's brought challenges, is that conversion to digital and accessibility for families to be part of SECs that may not be able to attend in present. But it also means that the outreach has gone video for a large part too. So I think that's an excellent idea, that we should put some thought to what key messaging you would want brought forward as a committee. And then how do we do that? Because not only could it be then through SCCs, but that could be something that we post on the website and push out through social media too, that your organizations could then pick up. And we could get a fairly high reach, I would think, through that with a very concise message. I think that's a great idea.
I was going to say that I thought that would be a fantastic idea. How that fantastic video we just saw was something like that with SEAC, where we all kind of introduce who we are, who we represent, and what SEAC as a whole does for you, kind of thing. It would be phenomenal to create. And I'm just going to pop in and just quickly say, because I don't see that Claudine has been able to reconnect. Hopefully she can. But we'll give her some time if she can get back on. But that, I see my role as SEAC, I've been on it for a few years now, and it's something I really enjoy. I think we've tried very hard in many ways to get our reach out there, and we've had some success, and I know I've done some presentations. I sort of see my role as, we when we notice problems or if we notice something as well, bringing that to the attention of SEAC, bringing it to a SEAC meeting, but also bringing ideas and solutions to go with that. Because I think that's sort of the biggest part of it, right? Because sometimes, a system is a system, and they sort of, those ideas coming in, hey, did you think of this? Or hey, did you think of that? So whenever somebody comes to me with a concern or a problem that I do bring to SEAC, I also try to bring the idea of, what we could do to sort of prevent that situation from happening in the future, or, possible solutions to overcome those things. So that's just my sort of 2 cents worth. Did anybody have anything else to add? I think maybe it might be a good idea if we all, before our next SEAC meeting, have a chance to actually take a look at that SEAC handbook, and maybe one of our action items could be questions that you might have from that handbook, and anything that you think may need to be addressed. Okay. All right. Then moving on now to the staff reports. We're going to start with the administration report.
Thank you very much. So we've got it a bit chunked, and then any of the numbers referenced tonight, I will put in an email following SEAC, and then Diane will also include in the minutes. So for the Durham District School Board, this school year, the 2021 school year, has a focus in 4 main areas: mental health and well-being, and you saw and heard from Stephanie, our mental health lead tonight; equity, and specifically addressing anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism; opportunity gap closing. Gap closing has always been a priority, but we do recognize that the spring has changed circumstances for many of our families, so we need to be very deliberate in that as well. And then innovation. As we look at being agile between in-person and virtual learning, innovation has always been a commitment of the board, but becomes absolutely essential this year. So those become our 4. This builds on our multi-year commitment to igniting learning across those 6 priorities, while meeting the critical needs of those we serve and those we serve with. And we see a really great integration across departments and teams, school and district as well. In each of these 4 areas, it's really critical that we be active in the work. And we talked at SEAC, I believe it was our June meeting, on the impact of actions in the community, such as those that impact through an anti-Black racism experience, and that being really important for us to put voice, conversation, not only with our students, but our staff, and be mobile and allies in changing practice and experience for that. And it was evidenced in August. We did run a 3-day conference, which brought staff from across our system into critical conversations on those 4 topics. We called it Ignite Unlearning, because this isn't just about learning forward, but about changing systems, practices, conversations. And it was really powerful. And that was just a launch point for further conversations this year, not a static 3 days, but a launch for that commitment across our system. When we flip to our programming too, 2020, as it kicked off back in the winter, it continues to bring opportunities for innovation, compassion, and agility. So in July, again, with thanks for SEAC for the additional meeting and Tara for your deputation to Budget and Finance Committee, the Board of Trustees did pass our budget in July. And since that time, the board has been in receipt, as referenced earlier this evening, of additional funding to support school reopening. And so within that funding, there was designated envelopes, which included mental health, well-being, and special education funding. And that was in addition to facility services staff and cleaning related costs for both classrooms and then by extension transportation as well. And then in addition, and I'm sure our trustees will reference in their reports, so I won't go into detail, our Board of Trustees at standing did approve expenditure from reserves to help reduce class sizes and ensure distancing in our classrooms as well. So understanding that the challenging decision was made by families between in-person and virtual learning, up to this week as a board, we have remained flexible for families choosing and requesting switches between in-person and virtual learning from the original decision point, which was originally articulated as August 12th. And so that's come with complexities from an operational perspective, but when we take it from a student perspective and a family perspective, that was really important flexibility for us to have up to the launch of now having all of our students back in school as of tomorrow. Our elementary regular calendar hits full regular day attendance tomorrow. So there was an additional flexibility built into the model for our students accessing through our special education programs, as Kyla referenced. And as I said, as of tomorrow, we have all of our elementary students on full time, having moved through a transition period of staggered start. And our secondary students are this year on a quadmester, where they're taking 2 courses for a quarter of the year. And it's a blend of in-person and online learning. So as we've come all the way through that, we are at a bit of a turning point systemically, where it's now time for stability of staffing and students, with the exception of anything that is an accommodation need for a change in program considerations. We also too are very carefully watching the impact of the decisions and how that's playing out for programming for students. We'll continue to seek voice and make any amendments needed to be responsive to our students. So just in terms of numbers for SEAC this evening, and again, I will email these out, or maybe I'll put them in the chat box as well in a second. So we do have a fairly high number of students across the system that have enrolled in virtual learning. And for us, we did name the school. So as Kyla referenced, we have DDSB at Home, which is the school name for our virtual school. I'm going to go back to September 15th data. So Tuesday's data had 3,284. So that was 3,284 secondary students and 12,828. So 12,828 elementary students enrolled at DDSB at Home. And that number has changed since Tuesday, but that was our Tuesday data grab. We did pull our students with special education needs in terms of their learning. We did a repoll this afternoon, so these are hot off the presses numbers. So within DDSB at Home, we have 1,022 students in regular class placement. And that is slightly down from a couple weeks ago. So we have seen a movement of students who were previously selected virtual learning. Those that have IEPs, we've seen a movement of students returning to in-person learning. So as our virtual learning numbers have increased, our students with special education needs have actually been moving the opposite direction and going from virtual learning and coming back into their in-person learning. And then our secondary program is supporting 706 students in regular class placements through DDSB at Home. Included at DDSB at Home, because they're funded on GSN numbers and regular class size, we do have 6 classes of gifted programming running through DDSB at Home, and that's a pool of students who were reviewed into the program previously for in-person, who have made that selection for virtual learning. And I'll just pause there for a second. So 6 classes. And then when we look at the remainder of our special education classes, and as we said, right now we have the classes intact, remaining as a classroom of learners. Some of those programs have been together for a number of years, or transitions were based on relationships. And also that geographic disbursement of our classes. Right now in elementary, we have 57 learners and 67 in secondary who are attached to our special education classes, with the exception of SSP, I'll talk to that in a second, who are remaining at home, but at this time are attached to their class placements. So for example, practical learning or developmental. Added to that group, we do have 88 students who are in school support program between elementary and secondary who are bridging the 2 programs. And we do acknowledge that secondary being on a class-by-class basis, the transition between the 2 environments is a bit easier than what we're experiencing in elementary, and we continue to work through that. Kyla and Michelle hosted a Connect session for our SSP teachers this afternoon to try and problem solve some of the challenges and to pull excellent practice out of the system as well, working with our frontline staff. When we look to our services, Stephanie had on screen a picture of our Mental Health Connect button that was on the website that families can click and mention directly that they want to connect with a member of our mental health team. That was part of the summer learning. We have committed and extended that button for the full 2021 school year, as we had received pretty positive feedback from families and students that they liked that ability to directly flag a desire to connect rather than navigate through the school. So we keep that connection at the school level, but that button remains on the website. We've also designated a clinical space in 100% of our class in our schools, so that our clinicians have a protected space. It's got a plastic partition so that we can look at different scenarios that way. But it means that if we're sending in mental health workers or speech language, they know that they've got somewhere that is designated for that work with students. Again, we want to really protect cohorts and bubbles and making sure that we're addressing that. As well, too, our CERT rooms in elementary and our academic resources in secondary, we're pivoting to include a virtual learning hub as well. Again, conscientious of the different connect points for students with CERTs as well as EAs, and are growing that practice. And then we just continue in our community partnerships. So all of our growth programs are up and running. They do run 12 months of the year, most of them, and many 11. And so all of our partners are up and running, and we welcomed our students through growth back at the beginning of the year. And we've met a number of times with our partners such as Grandview around occupational and physiotherapy, and how that looks and intersects during COVID in our schools, and still service to families. So that's on tap as well. So I think to our appreciation this evening, if you don't mind us just taking a second, is we'd like to thank the DDSB students and families. Everyone across the system has truly come together to build the 2021 school year. And we'd just like to highlight, in addition to the families, our administrators who returned early to start restaffing, re-timetabling, and they've done what normally takes a few months into a very condensed time period to make sure we were ready to launch the year. And they've just been phenomenal in support of kids, in support of their staff, and have constantly been pivoting tweaks to make that happen. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't do a special call out this evening for our facility services staff. Many of them been working 7 days a week, right through many, many weeks to ensure that our working and learning spaces were ready and that health remains steadfast as a foundation to assuring safety protocols for setup and cleaning. They've just been outstanding. So we truly live that DDSB Stronger Together. And those are two employee groups that we'd just like to bring attention to tonight for going above and beyond to support a great startup alongside our educators and our families. So just in terms of next steps, we want to continue to help be responsive to inquiries from families. I think it was referenced tonight. We have posted an FAQ specific to inclusive student services. Craig, I hear you on the volume of information, so we'll take a look through that lens. And if you have suggestions, please email me. But if there's questions that are missing too, because that FAQ is really meant to be that funneled, narrowed. If you're looking for things around accommodation, go to the FAQ. So please email me if there's information missing, and the leadership team will work to build that out. We really want the voice of SEAC to help shape the updates to the tools for families. And then we'll just continue to engage the voice of students and families to make responsive changes as they're needed. And then we also know too that schools have quickly established routines, and that feeling of reconnection and mattering has been so evident. You can feel it when we're out in schools, and the kids have brought the energy back to learning. And that's across both the in-person and the virtual. So we'll continue to learn with and from our students to continue to adjust the programming for well-being, mental health, and their academic success. So that would be the admin report tonight. And as committed, I will send you those numbers right after the meeting. Happy to take any questions, and know that our officers are still online this evening as well, if there's questions in that regard.
Sorry, Christine, go ahead.
Yes, Andrea, I just wanted to kind of support or reinforce the point that you made about the reserve funds, which were released based on careful analysis of the needs of the board. And I was particularly pleased at the fact that the funds are basically supporting the needs of our students and staff in the schools. And I think that is really important to note. So just a comment around that.
Anybody else have any questions for Andrea with respect to that? Hannah, go ahead.
Yeah, Andrea, I was just wondering, I know from Easter Seals, one of the questions we've been wanting to ask the boards is how access to health therapy services will be delivered with the internal staff and external staff through the rehab services. And secondary question and kind of concern that's also been brought up through Easter Seals Ontario is just access to programs and services for those professional services for those who've selected into the remote learning. I didn't hear specifically, I could have missed it, but I wonder if you could speak to those two pieces.
Thank you. So I'll start and then just Kyla's our lead for OTPT and the connection with Grandview, so I'm sure she'll jump in. So one of the things that we did as we built DDSB at home is to make sure that all of the supports and services remained available to all students. So we do fully have a clinical team that has assignment to DDSB at home. The majority of members are serving both in person and virtual to keep an eye to what the needs of the system are and students. So full access to our internal staff. That also includes hearing, vision. We do have interpreters and interveners working in the virtual school based on individual student moves over. And then we've been building a model with Grandview in terms of occupational and physiotherapy. We do sit a bit different than some other boards. I know York, for example, does have the therapy staff on staff with them as a board and then bridges to the community. All of the occupational and physiotherapists that we work with are part of the Grandview team. We don't have any that are part of the board complement. And so we've just been working with them. We've prioritized health and safety. So students that have grown and need equipment and looking at that, our whole effort is to minimize contact where possible, do virtual connections and consultations where possible, and then Grandview's bridging into maintaining their at-home service for kids as well. But Kyla was on the most recent call with them, so I'm not sure if she has anything to add, but would have the most recent information from hot off the presses yesterday.
Absolutely. So one of the pieces that was clear from Grandview is that they will absolutely continue to prioritize those essential services. And so we've already had a number of situations where it would be urgent in terms of getting in to evaluate the health and safety needs of a student who was accessing in-person learning. And so they've already come to schools in a number of cases to ensure that the appropriate equipment or needs of the student are being met right before the student even had arrived on the first day of school. So there's absolutely a reassurance that that will not change. Those high priority intensive need to get there in advance or as quickly as possible will continue to happen. They are also looking at any service they can provide virtually, they will. So they've done that in a number of different scenarios already, providing virtual service, and also that their site, the Oshawa site, is already open and has been for quite a number of weeks, but their additional sites are also opening up for any services that are being provided outside of school, but that they're working with the DDSB at home certs to understand how they're going to provide that service to the students who may be accessing virtual school. So it's definitely on the radar. They are working together with the administration and certs at the virtual school, but then also looking at how we evolve into moving back into our normal in-person support. And so right now that's a coordination. We've asked them to coordinate with certs to actually book appointments at the school so that there's an awareness that they are coming, to ensure that there's a space that they can be able to work with and support the student. So it's just, it's more, I would say, planned in terms of them wanting to also, with the number of students moving back and forth between virtual school and in-person learning, we've asked them to ensure they make that connection to know where in fact the student is learning at present, especially for some of our students accessing small classes, because they may make that decision depending on the health needs that they're in person or at home. And so wanting to support the service professional as well, and not arriving to a school to discover the student is not attending in person either. So coordinating that clear communication, but doing it through the form of actually scheduling an appointment on site so that there's that that ability to know that that's happening. But they have absolutely assured us that regardless of where the child is accessing their learning, they are working forward with a plan. And we've all acknowledged that communication will be key for that, so that we know when they're coming, and to ensure that a safe space can be put in place with cleaning protocols and whatever else may be needed as part of providing that service on site.
Great, yeah, thank you. I don't know if I can ask a follow-up question to it. So in my other interactions as well, not specifically through Easter Seals Ontario, but through the Complex Care Ontario with those that are more medically fragile, I've been hearing a lot from families that they have been told, and it may not be specific to DDSB, and so I thought I'd just bring the question out. for any other people who are watching that this might be relevant for them, or for some of the other community members who are interacting with, that they have had or will not have any access to the medical services that were normally in some of the school boards. But that's what I was hearing at the end of August, early September. So I was just wondering where that's landed for DDSB as well.
So through you, Eva. So we were pleased to have our nursing supports for the students that needed right alongside as the buses pulled up on the first day based on students' individual school calendars. So for myself, I was out at Maxwell when the buses pulled up for our students who access through developmental. And they do have a nurse embedded within their team. She was there half an hour before the bell, getting excited with the staff to welcome the students back.
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. I meant to say for the remote, those who opted into the remote learning.
Remote, my apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just a bit tricky. For the most part, if it's funded through LIN, that's being immobilized. The only one sliver is around sterile catheterization, and we just have 2 students. But home-based goes back over to Ministry of Health. When the students are in ed, it's our responsibility. So it's just 2 students impacted, but the funding flipped back to Ministry of Health while the students are at home.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions with respect to the admin report? Okay, then let's move on to the board reports.
So I'm just going to carry a bit on the theme of the whole funding, just to put a few numbers out there in that provincially, the provincial government had provided the DDSB with approximately $15.4 million for various initiatives, as we talked about, technology, transportation, ventilation, staffing, and staffing for actually remote learning, special education and mental health, and etc. As mentioned, we had basically approved the 1% of our operating budget from reserves, which was a tune of 8.1, to support things for like the pandemic academic support team, and additional teachers for to address class sizes, and those to address the average class sizes where the average size was at the larger end, and as well as to additional transportation costs in order to even allow just the 2 students per seat, because in some cases we used to have 3 students per seat for buses, as far as that was concerned. And then as well as additional supervision, particularly around the supporting if there happens to be a child or a staff member who becomes ill, for supervision within the specific designated area where they will be held before somebody comes to pick up, and in the case of a student. So we did approve that. We have put out an RFP for our integrity commissioner. We are in the process of filling our director of education position, and as well as of course, the next item, one of the items of the agenda that is coming up is around mandatory masks, discussion around mandatory masks for children of, for kindergarten to grade 3, is a discussion that the trustees are having and definitely getting a lot of feedback. But I would appreciate if various communities within SEAC, if they wanted to provide Christine or I with their comments on their thoughts around mandatory masking from K to K-3 students. I much appreciated that as well, so that we can have that information for that discussion. That it's been kudos for staff. I mean, they've been working very hard, pretty much all summer. But as Andrea had mentioned, that the change from in-school to virtual has definitely fluctuated. Even though we had put up a cutoff date, I mean, we continue to support that. However, it has been a little bit difficult once the September 2nd came along to ensure the stabilization of classes, etc. To get the IT kind of support and get it out there. We added additional administrative supports within the virtual school as well for the number of calls and address those as well. So staff is working really hard. They're, kudos to them. I can just say that Durham in particular has managed to start their classes on time. It's not that there isn't any hiccups, but they've started their classes in the way we said. They've put a fairly robust plan together, as I said, but there are hiccups and we recognize that. But we haven't had to delay the startup of school like some of the other boards have. Some actually are the DDSB's plan and around return to school was actually held up as a bit of a model to the rest of the province. So we're really quite pleased from that perspective. So a lot of hard work, a lot of cooperation, collaboration put in by everybody to ensure that things are being put in place for day one of school. Anything you want to add, Christine?
You're muted, Christine.
Yes. No, nothing to add, Donna. I think you covered everything there. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions with respect to the board reports? Tara, go ahead.
Thanks, Eva. Just one quick question regarding transportation. We know we had a small little hiccup with the first week of busing for students. Has that stabilized? Like, should we be looking for or expecting potential further changes coming, or are we do we think we've got it sort of sorted? I know we just had the influx and children changing in person, online. How's that going?
I think, and I think Andrea could say that we've kind of got that straightened out, except maybe in Ajax if just a little bit of a blip when it came to last Friday. We got notice of very late notice, late Friday, that crossing guards were being eliminated at lunchtime. People would say, well, how does that affect transportation? But it does when it comes to picking out and choosing bus stops. The crossing guards were actually eliminated before school started. And then now with some advocacy, it was a recommendation going to the from staff to the General Governance Committee, and they had agreed to put it back to staff and do some consultation with DSTS and the two boards from that perspective. So, but the report is to go back in November. So that might have some impacts as far as stops, but everything else is pretty much stabilized. Again, it was just lunch hour, so I'm not sure it would have too many stops impacts for elementary students. It would be more, I guess, secondary students, because our elementary students basically stay for the period of the day from that perspective. So transportation, I know that one of our boards next to us have had issues around bus driver shortages and have had to temporarily eliminate a few routes. We continue to monitor that, well, DSTS does, but we haven't run into that problem at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Hannah, I think you're up next.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
I just
Christine.
had a question, more so just to become educated around it. You mentioned, Donna, that there was some hiring that was happening to the different roles at the school board. Who kind of sits in on some of those pieces that has the special education lens to that, in terms of, especially in some of the roles that have larger oversight into multiple realms of and specifically inclusive student services and all of that as well. Is that question clear?
Yes, it is, and I'll address the one employee that the Board of Trustees hire is actually the director. That's all we hire. The rest of the employees are hired basically at the senior level. If you're looking at superintendents, is hired by the Director of Education, and there is a panel, and the panel is consists of superintendents as well as usually 3 trustees when it comes to that. But how the appointments of the superintendents and their portfolios, again, is up to the Director of Education. Usually they ask us for feedback as far as, where we see, not people in particular, but about positions and their needs. But it's up to the Director of Education to put those people in and assign those people their portfolios. I don't know if, and Andrea can kind of speak on the rest of that.
Yeah, so Hannah,
Go
is
ahead,
there
Andrea.
reference also to the 4 roles that Donna mentioned from the reserve funding? So in terms of those hirings, I think that's why it's really important too that you see the complement of inclusive student services and special education officers go back up to 2. So Kyla and Michelle have a really critical role in supporting the inclusive leadership practices of their colleagues at the principal level. Because really a lot of that hiring, when we talk about teachers and we talk about supervision and lunchroom supervisors, is led at a school level so that community need can be met by our school leaders, and that intersect with an inclusionary lens to supporting the whole community. In terms of the pandemic support team, that'll be coming in centrally through our curriculum department. And again, one of the colleagues for Michelle and Kyla in an officer's lens will be leading that as well. We've looked at a number of supports too in terms of a mental health and well-being perspective, and we diversify our team to make sure that the academic as well as the mental health and pieces are included in that lens of hiring as well. So quite often we will, as much as we can, put a diverse panel together. And so everybody, similar to how we come at SEAC conversations and we all bring different perspectives and lenses, that's what ideally we have within our hiring committees too. Because we all sit in that interconnection of co-service. But really most of the positions pivot at the school level, within the purview of the principal. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to grow. I think our admins are fairly strong in that, but we're always developing as leaders. And that's where Kyla and Michelle's leadership is so key in supporting their colleagues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Christine?
Yes, I just thought I might just add a little something to Donna's presentation. I had the opportunity to get into a number of our schools this week, and basically just to check up on some of the things that we have assured our families, class sizes, making sure that all of the safety precautions are in place. One of the areas of feedback that I received in all of the schools that I visited was with respect to the graduated entry. And it was found that the graduated entry really helped staff to put in place many of the guidelines with the kids. The first week, each of the 4 days included 25% of the kids in the classes. The second week, from Monday to Thursday, there were 50% of the students in the classes attending. So by Friday, which is tomorrow, the full complement will be at school. Initially, the board introduced graduated entry, again, just for the FDK students, and then we rolled it out to include the other classes. And just to let you know that the feedback was that it was a really excellent way for staff to get to know their students and introduce safety measures. Thanks, Eva.
No problem. Does anybody else have any questions with respect to the board reports? No? Claudine, before we move on, I want to give you an opportunity if you wanted to make the point that you were going to make earlier.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if anybody said this because I missed the last 2 points on this topic. We spoke a lot about advocacy, but from my perspective, it's transparency. A lot of the work has been done. We have the systems in place. We know, us on SEAC, know who to contact or where we send families to. But I still find that specifically families with autism who I represent, as well as families that may come from an ethnic minority, have a viewpoint or perspective that the system may be hard to navigate or set against them. And one of the good things is, although like Craig, the websites are hard to navigate, but it is nice when I can sit in front of a family and open up the page and read the documentation to them so that they have the understanding before they enter the meeting, before they approach their administrator. And I think that transparency is what I'm supporting.
Thank you, Claudine. I agree 100%. Okay, so moving on to association reports. Do we have any association reports this month? Rowan, go ahead.
Yes, so just sort of as a reminder, October is LD Awareness Month. I'm probably going to talk to Andrea off the call, looking to see if we can get our information on the website, just sort of promote it so that people are aware. We've done it in years past, but this year we're creating an LD Awareness Month calendar. Just highlights basically either one fact or, an individual who has LD on a daily basis. I think it's just, again, grassroots, getting people out there knowing, oh, there's other people like us out there. And so if you know anybody, please, bring them to our website. But we will be sending this out to, hopefully we can get that out to the certs and the appropriate staff. So just keep that in mind. And we might have some type of session towards the end of the month. again, with the current environment, we're just trying to figure out how to go about doing that. Thanks.
Thank you, Rowan. Go ahead, Elizabeth. You're next.
Yeah, hi. The Ontario Association for Families of Children with Communication Disorders, they have made a push to try and improve their online presence. So there has been kind of revamping, addition of some materials to the website. So if anyone is interested in checking that out, it's oafccd.com. And there's also been an increased presence on Facebook. So if anyone is on Facebook and wants to like and follow that page, there's some interesting articles that's been posted there.
Thank you. Anybody else? Tara, go ahead.
Yes, hi. With the Durham Down Syndrome Association, sorry, I just had to find the email for a second. They are offering, a few years back, we actually had from the Canadian Down Syndrome Society, an educator package with guidelines and tips for educating children for inclusive education for students with Down syndrome. The Down Syndrome Association has received a new package of those educator packages. So anyone, CERTs or parents that would like a copy, please let us know and we'll do what we can to get those out for distribution. So Andrew, I'll send you the link so then we can get to that. I think it's through Master Mail. I will double check the contact on that, but just to let folks know that those are coming out.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. So we can link, and it goes across all the associations within our CERT OneNote. Any of the resources or web links that your associations have to update the page within the CERT OneNote with those, and then draw attention to it through the facilitators as well.
Fantastic. Any other association reports? I will just say with ABC, we had our first, well, they've gone through the main association has gone through pretty much an entire change of their board of directors or whatever. So they, we had our first ever sort of video call with the SEAC reps, which we hope to do on a much more consistent basis, because it was a great opportunity to hear what was happening across the province in the gifted programming. And just, you know, because I was shocked at some of the stuff I was hearing on their call. So I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to the DDSB in your online gifted programming. I'm really happy to hear that because a lot of the boards are not providing that same service. So I'm really proud of the DDSB and what they're doing in that respect. And I know our students' families appreciate that as well. So I just thought I would share that, but outside of that, it seems like we can move on then, right? Okay, so the next thing we're moving on to is item 11, correspondence. We received 2 letters from the Integration Action for Inclusion. I don't know, has anybody had a chance to actually review those letters? Because I noticed the one was on Bill 197, which has to do with the ending of streaming, particularly starting in grade 9. Sorry. One was on taking away the streaming, but still concerned about the number of refusals to admit. For students with disabilities. So while that helps with inclusion and equity with respect to anti-Black racism and unfairly streaming of kids as well as kids with disabilities, we still might want to consider, and maybe we can bring this back up if anybody wants to take a deeper look at the letter and whether or not we want to sort of do a letter to follow up as well with respect to the province having, dealing with refusals to admit for students with disabilities. And the other one has to do with the COVID, the 2020-21 academic year and relationship to the pandemic. And talking about, I guess, concerns a number of boards of parents whose the kids with special education needs sort of haven't been at the forefront of those sort of discussions. I don't necessarily think that's the case here in our board, but I guess I would reach out for thoughts on that with respect to you guys and what you thought of the letters. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts with respect to them? Go ahead, Tara.
So both letters were dated July 25th. One was, and the one regarding reopening of schools there's been more information and developments since then. I didn't get a chance to read through every note in that particular one, but have been most of the points that they were looking for clarity on been addressed since we've actually gotten to school reopening at this point?
Yeah, that's the part I'm not quite sure of. I know I didn't really have a chance to do a deep dive into the letters today. This was my sort of first week back to working almost full-time hours, so I was sort of deep dived into that. And I don't know if we want to bring them back around next month, if we want to take a close look at them and see if there's anything that we think needs to still be addressed that maybe hasn't been addressed by the province. Sort of thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
So just in regards to the first letter, to Tara's point, I think how I read it is concern about the connection to peers and communities. So that's certainly where we led forward from keeping our special education classes intact, because we do have kids accessing near or in their home communities. And again, we'll keep revisiting and understand the experience, but that intent was how that model was done. Alternate schedules, our students that are in our small class placements in secondary have access to all day, everyday learning. Because we know that transitioning that to at home and the alternate schedule would be challenging for them. So they access the integration when they're in the building at the same time as their mainstream peers. But they do have that all day, every day access in terms of that. And then we've talked tonight about a little bit about the experience of our students at home, and we'll continue to shape that with you and the feedback that you receive from families and ourselves as well. And then I felt like the third one, like physical distancing, our trustees have both spoken to that tonight, and the commitment and the supports that have been there. And then the well-being of educators. So our well-being and mental health strategy has led forward as our schools being important. That's inclusive of our staff and the students. And I can on that one bring forward a little bit more. Our team has planned some pretty intentional supports for our leaders around compassion fatigue, and vicarious trauma in terms of what they're experiencing in students. So I would read it myself, but again, at the will of SEAC, that the first one around school reopenings has largely been addressed, and the focus would be on the second letter in terms of the academic year and access and equity. But that's just my take, again, advisory to SEAC.
Thank you, Andrea. Oh. No, go ahead, Donna.
Donna, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm glad that you gave the input as far as what's happening here. But from a provincial perspective, we've actually been having this discussion around the K-12 SDC table quite a bit, the PPM on remote learning did talk about that the ministry had sent out about had some guidelines around special education and some of the concerns that we're supposed to address, and I know that our board had particularly addressed. There is, I think I had mentioned it previously, but there is a concern as students return to school around increased anxieties and maybe behaviors related to the return to school, and in that there is no clear direction per se around exclusions, and that there's been a couple of calls from a couple of associations for a policy or direction around refusals to admit, sort of thing, and or guidelines around that. So that might be a discussion that we might want to have as far as that's concerned. But I would say that for most part, not all, but for most part, that PPM did address some of the concerns that was happening, other than that, recognizing that different boards have different programs for students with special needs, and that, you know, we do know that our coterminous board doesn't have any small class placements, right? So so the issues there may be slightly different than what we have here, in that we some of the measures that Andrea talked about, and we talking to as far as socialization and that integration with their peers. So it is definitely a board to board perspective on those items.
Does anybody else have any thoughts to add on that? No? Okay, the other real important piece of correspondence we have is our letter to the ministry with respect to the process, the fall 2020 process exemption for the special instance portion submission requirements. We had sent out a draft of a letter that we'd like to send to the minister with respect to how we'd like to see them handle those to make it far less cumbersome for this school year, and so that our resources can be directed to servicing children as opposed to writing, you know, reports and applications. Is everybody think the letter is acceptable? Do you have any comments on it that they'd like to make? Because we'd like to get that out like last week. Okay, then should we make a motion then to approve that letter?
Excuse me, sorry, Eva, I don't know if you're seeing my hand go up. I don't know what's happening here.
No, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I'm just concerned because we are recognize that it might be a letter that you want to recommend to go to the board for the board to send such a letter to the Ministry of Education around funding and SIP. It's just my feeling that it might be a letter saying that, you know, you've drafted this letter and you would like the board, and we could get it, try to get it, I know, introduce it to the agenda maybe even on Monday, but we would have to send it out fairly quickly from that perspective. Just my suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead, Tara.
I was about to say, Donna, that's actually a really good point. Generally speaking,
Yeah.
ministry tends to not look at SEAC in terms of funding recommendations rather than the boards, than the trustees. So that's probably a better avenue to take if we're going to get some traction on that one.
I agree. Does anybody else have anything to add? Okay, so do we want a motion to send this letter to the board to request that the board send it out?
Yeah, basically, yeah, a motion to request the board to send a letter around SIP, and here's the draft letter that SEAC has put together.
Okay, second. Tara, all in favor? Okay, that would be passed. Excellent, thank you guys. So that motion is passed. So Andrea, would you guys send that now to the board, the copy of the draft letter to the trustees? From you guys?
I would say that, yeah, if Andrea could get it through the administrative portion, and we will try to, I will try to get it to our chair of the board as well, to say that this is a motion has been passed as far as from SEAC, and it's kind of, it would be kind of good to be able to address. They're going to hate me. This is my second item I've added to the agenda. Maybe Chris, you can do it.
I'd be happy to check that out, Donna, given the fact that I think that the agenda may be couriered to us tomorrow. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but I would be more than happy to check that out, Eva, if that's okay with you.
That's great with me. I know that you guys will jump through hoops of fire to get that on if you can. So
we will do.
That would be great. That will be great. Thank you so much. Okay, then moving on then to item number 12, community concerns. Does anybody have concerns from the community that they would like to bring forward? So I don't see anybody's hands. Does anybody have anything? Sorry, yeah, Elizabeth, go ahead.
It's almost like I'm the community bringing it to you, but I have a question just about how the grade 3 gifted testing might work in the current situation, just so that we can make sure that we're getting those kids identified.
So Eva, through you, if that's okay. So we are working on it. We obviously need to privilege health and safety and cohorting and resources in the direction of our health department in terms of that. And our standard yearly practice is group testing in the system. So we're currently working across boards and with Nelson, who is the CCAT provider, to look at options for that. We do anticipate the process be slightly delayed. But again, our students are needing to acclimate. We wouldn't have good testing conditions on a normal timeline either, where it would be fair and equitable to our students. So we're working on it, and we'll be pleased to bring update back to SEAC on that.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth, for getting that one. Yes, I hadn't actually thought about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else?
Grade 3, so it's on my radar.
Yes, mine's in grade 11. So, okay. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring forward? And my apologies. I realized that, or Diane's brought to my attention that we have to approve the letter for the LDAR alternate, which I think I missed in my printouts because my printer ran out of ink. Does everybody have a copy of that letter? Here it is on mine. It looks like they're yes. It looks like they're the alternate will be Donna Cook, and that they meet the requirements. Can we get a motion to approve that? Tara, seconded. Elizabeth? Yeah? Okay, sorry. All in favor? Okay, passed. Excellent. Thank you. And that goes now to you, right, Donna? To take to board as well?
If again, it's another thing that if we, in order to expedite, we're going to have to bring the motion forward to the board. Otherwise, won't be until it won't go to the board until October, and then they can't sit until November. So I would suggest it's another item we need to add as part of the SEAC report, and bring it forward. And Diane will make sure, I guess, the paperwork gets to through the board, hopefully.
I'll add it to the list, Donna.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Diane. All right. Moving on then to celebrations and successes. Does anybody have any celebrations or successes to bring forward? Tara, go ahead.
I got to bring an Adam story to the table. So I know people have known him for a while. Adam started grade 9 high school this year, and he's essentially taken to it like a rock star. I have to give kudos to the school for all the work that they did getting him in place and meeting him on the bus and dropping him off. And it's been fantastic. So with all of this uncertainty, I actually have to give immense kudos to like the entire staff there. They've just done an amazing job. But I took the obligatory first day photo, and he was very, smiling, super happy on the at the door. And I said, "Oh, Adam, you look so handsome." He goes, "I know," and then just walks out the door. Handled it like a trooper. And on Sunday, I said, "Oh, you got to go back to school on Monday." He goes, "No, Mom, high school." So he is so all over it. So the transition's been so fantastic this year. So I'm so super thrilled. So I had to share that in spite of everything that's been going on, that people have just been going above and beyond to make sure that our kids are able to actually want to go to school again. So just had to share.
That's fantastic.
I'm
fantastic to hear.
My hand is up. I just wasn't sure if you saw that.
No, I hadn't. That's okay. Sometimes it doesn't quite make it into the camera range. So go ahead, you, Christine, and then Donna.
Oh, thank you. Last year, Superintendent Macaulay presented our board policy around service animals. And up until this week, that was just kind of an item that was presented on paper, but hadn't become real to me. While I was visiting our schools this week in the Whitby area, I met one of our service dogs, Ibby. And Ibby happened to be on a break in the principal's office. And so I was permitted to give him a treat. And it was a real treat to meet Ibby. And apparently he does look after one of our little young men at the school. So just wanted to bring that in as both a celebration and a success.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Donna, go ahead.
That's actually great to hear, Christine, because again, when I sit at my table, I don't always hear of successes in other boards, and so that's really a good story to bring forward. And that's seeing that we have a service animal within our midst, and is supporting our students. And I just, one of the things that I wanted to bring forward, because it's not as a trustee, but it's really on my K-12 SDC, is that, and I think the link went out for, but is that the K-12 Accessory Education Standards Committee has been working very, very hard over the summer. We had a little bit of a stall at the beginning of COVID-19, but we continue to work. We do post our minutes, as well as there has been sort of an interim report on recommendations to the ministry around for students with, and we use the term students with disabilities because one of the comments that has been made is that under the Education Act, not all disabilities are recognized in their description. So we use the one under basically for under the Ontario Human Rights Act. There was a bunch of recommendations. One of the things I can honestly say is that when it came to the remote learning, some of the recommendations that we had preliminary discussed around our SDC table, they did find their way into that PPM, which was good to see. But I can provide a link. I think I did. I don't know if it went to this SEAC or not from the K-12, that particular report, but we're looking at the final report being done, completed by the end of October. It's very ambitious, but the end of October, so it can go out to public consultation in November. And each of the associations, I think, it's going to be really playing a key part on when it goes out to public consultation, is that these are just recommendations, and then the ministry will either take them and either put them into an education standard, or they might put them into a policy memorandum or so forth. So it would be really key to getting feedback on some of those things. And just on the COVID emergency planning related one, we had 92 recommendations, and that's a lot. So it's been a really great group to work with, and I've learned a significant amount. Even though I've been involved in, as far as an advocate, I've learned so much more from that perspective. And I would really, really like, as soon as it is available, but even if you get look at the emergency planning recommendations, that you'll get a sort of a feel of some of the recommendations that are coming forward. And that I would really like to get input from our SEAC on those, and ensuring that and feedback from your associations to the ministry when it does go out to public consultation. And that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Will you get those links out to Diane to just send out again, just to make sure we all have them? Yeah, okay. Does anybody else have any celebrations or successes they'd like to share? Okay, well, our next SEAC meeting is Thursday, October 15th, 2020, and it will be a virtual meeting again. Does anybody wish to make a motion to adjourn? Donna, second. Tara, all in favor? All right. Passed. Excellent. So we'll see you all next month.